2 days ago, a viewer named Walter from British Columbia left a comment on my banking video that I could not stop reading. He wrote, "Linda, I went to my bank yesterday to make sure my CPP and OAS deposits were set up correctly, and the teller told me that starting July 13th, our bank is implementing new verification and compliance requirements that affect how senior accounts are managed and how government deposits are processed." I asked her to explain exactly what was changing. She gave me a pamphlet that I did not understand and told me to call a number on the back. I called the number and sat on hold for 38 minutes. When someone finally answered, they told me the changes were standard regulatory updates and that I did not need to worry. I am 76 years old. I have been receiving CPP and OAS for 11 years. I do not know what standard regulatory updates means, and I do not know if my deposits are safe. Nobody explained anything clearly. That comment received over 1,100 replies from seniors in Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick within 24 hours. 1,100 Canadian seniors who had either received the same pamphlet, heard the same explanation from a bank teller, or simply had no idea that new bank rules affecting their CPP and OAS deposits were starting on July 13th. And that there were specific actions they needed to take before that date to make sure their government income was fully protected. Today, I am going to tell you exactly what these new bank rules are, exactly what is changing on July 13th, exactly which actions you need to take before that date, and exactly how these changes connect to your CPP, your OAS, and your GIS in ways that most seniors have not been told clearly. Before I walk you through every detail of what is changing and what you need to do, one critical thing first. Your bank will not call you personally to walk you through how these new rules affect your specific CPP and OAS deposit arrangements. Service Canada will not send you a letter explaining how the new bank compliance requirements interact with your government benefit payments. The pamphlet your teller hands you will not explain the GIS connection. Subscribe and turn on notifications right now so that every time something this urgent comes up, you find out from this channel with enough time to act before the deadline. Now let me show you exactly what is changing on July 13th and what you need to do before it arrives. This is not a small administrative update that your bank can manage on your behalf without any action from you. What is changing on July 13th involves updated compliance requirements under Canadian banking regulations that affect how federally regulated financial institutions verify, monitor, and process accounts belonging to senior customers, and several of these changes require specific actions from account holders before the implementation date to ensure that government benefit deposits, including CPP, OAS, and GIS, continue to flow without interruption into fully verified and compliant accounts. According to the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada and updated guidelines from the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, commonly known as FINTRAC, Canadian banks are implementing enhanced customer due diligence requirements in July 2026 that include updated identity verification standards, enhanced beneficial ownership documentation for accounts with joint holders or power of attorney arrangements, and new transaction monitoring protocols that apply specifically to accounts receiving regular government benefit deposits. The reason these changes are happening now is that Canadian banking regulators have been progressively tightening anti-money laundering and elder financial protection standards since 2022. And July 2026 represents a mandatory compliance deadline by which all federally regulated financial institutions must have their enhanced customer due diligence systems fully operational. The critical point that most coverage is missing entirely is that these are not passive changes that your bank implements silently in the background while your CPP and OAS continue arriving as normal. Several of these changes require your active participation before July 13th to ensure your account remains fully compliant and your government deposits remain uninterrupted. The first new bank rule that every Canadian senior must act on before July 13th involves updated identity verification requirements for accounts that receive regular government benefit deposits. Under the new FINTRAC Enhanced Customer Due Diligence Standards, Banks are required to have current and verified identification documentation on file for every account holder whose account receives recurring government transfers, including CPP, OAS, and GIS deposits. For most seniors whose identification documents are current and whose information at the bank matches their information at Service Canada and the CRA, this requirement will be satisfied automatically through the bank's internal records review process. However, seniors whose government-issued identification has expired, whose address on file at the bank does not match their address on file at Service Canada, or whose account information has not been formally updated following a major life event, such as the death of a spouse, a name change, or a change of province of residence, may find that their account is flagged for a manual verification review under the new standards. An account flagged for manual verification review after July 13th is not automatically frozen, but it may be subject to enhanced monitoring and, in some cases, temporary transaction restrictions while the verification is completed. For seniors whose CPP OAS and GIS are deposited into a flagged account, a temporary transaction restriction during the verification period could delay access to government income that most seniors depend on immediately upon deposit. Who needs to act on this immediately includes every senior whose government-issued identification, including passport, provincial health card, or driver's license has expired or is expiring before the end of 2026. Those whose address on file at their bank differs from the address on file at Service Canada or the CRA, and those who have not formally updated their bank account information following the death of a spouse or a recent change in living situation. Who is least at risk includes seniors whose identification is current, whose information is consistent across their bank, their Service Canada account, and their CRA account, and whose account has had no significant changes in the past 2 years. The second new bank rule is the one causing the most confusion among seniors, and it involves enhanced documentation requirements for accounts that have a joint account holder, a power of attorney designation, or a trusted contact person arrangement in place. Under the new enhanced customer due diligence standards taking effect July 13th, banks are required to have updated and verified documentation on file for every authorized person who has any form of access to or authority over a senior account holder's account. This means that if you have added a family member as a joint account holder, if you have given someone power of attorney over your finances, or if your bank has a trusted contact person on file for your account, your bank may contact you before July 13th to request updated documentation confirming these arrangements and verifying the identity of the authorized individuals. Seniors who have these arrangements in place but whose documentation is outdated, whose authorized person's identification has changed, or who added an authorized person informally without completing the bank's official documentation process may find their account flagged for a compliance review after July 13th that temporarily affects how their account operates while the documentation is brought into compliance. The average senior affected by this requirement has had a family member informally helping them with banking for years without the formal documentation the new standards require, and they have never been told that an informal arrangement that worked perfectly well under the old standards may not satisfy the enhanced documentation requirements taking effect on July 13th. Who is most at risk includes seniors whose adult children or family members regularly access their account without formal joint holder or power of attorney documentation on file at the bank, those whose power of attorney documents have not been reviewed or updated in more than 5 years, and those who have a trusted contact person at the bank but have not formally confirmed that arrangement through the bank's current documentation process. Who is least at risk includes seniors who manage their accounts entirely independently with no authorized third-party access and whose identification and account information is fully current. Here is the insider knowledge moment that almost nobody is explaining clearly right now, and it is the most important action you can take before July 13th to protect your CPP, OAS, and GIS deposits. The single most effective thing a Canadian senior can do before July 13th is to visit their bank branch in person Ask specifically to speak with the branch manager rather than a teller, and ask the manager three specific questions. First, ask whether your account is currently fully compliant with the new enhanced customer due diligence requirements taking effect on July 13th, and whether any documentation updates are required from you before that date. Second, ask whether your direct deposit arrangements for CPP, OAS, and GIS are properly linked to your account in a way that will remain fully operational under the new standards, and whether any verification of your government deposit information is required before the implementation date. Third, ask whether any joint account holders, power of attorney designations, or trusted contact persons on your account need updated documentation submitted before July 13th to maintain uninterrupted access to your account and your government deposits. Getting clear answers to these three questions in a single branch manager meeting before July 13th is the fastest and most reliable way to confirm that your account is fully prepared for the new rules and that your CPP, OAS, and GIS will continue arriving without any interruption or access delay after the implementation date. Canadians who work with financial advisors are already having this conversation proactively. Most Canadian seniors on CPP and OAS will find out about documentation gaps only after July 13th, when a compliance flag has already been generated on their account. Now you know to have this conversation before that happens. The third new bank rule is the one that connects directly to your GIS and creates a consequence that most coverage is not explaining at all. Under the new transaction monitoring protocols taking effect July 13th, banks are required to apply enhanced automated monitoring to accounts that receive regular government benefit deposits and that also exhibit certain transaction patterns associated with elder financial vulnerability. For seniors receiving GIS alongside CPP and OAS, their account is by definition an account receiving multiple streams of government income, and the combination of GIS deposits with certain transaction patterns can trigger enhanced monitoring flags under the new protocols that were not triggered under the previous standards. The GIS connection matters beyond the monitoring itself because GIS is the most income-sensitive benefit in the entire Canadian senior benefit system, and any disruption to account access during a monitoring review period can push seniors who depend on GIS for basic living expenses into emergency financial decisions that affect their reportable income and therefore their GIS calculation the following July. A senior who cannot access their GIS deposit for 5 to 7 business days due to a compliance hold and who covers that gap by making an early RRIF withdrawal or drawing from a non-registered savings account is creating taxable income that will flow into their CRA net income figure and reduce their GIS through the 50-cent formula the following year. Walter from British Columbia did not know about this cascade of consequences when he left his comment. He knew something was changing at his bank on July 13th. He did not know that how his account was set up before that date could determine whether his GIS continued arriving without interruption or whether a compliance flag triggered a chain of consequences that affected his benefit calculations for the following year. Most Canadian seniors receiving GIS will not know about this connection until after July 13th, when it is already too late to prepare. Walter visited his bank branch the morning after leaving his comment and asked specifically to speak with the branch manager. The manager confirmed that Walter's identification was current and that his direct deposit arrangements for CPP and OAS were properly documented. However, the manager also identified that Walter had added his daughter as an informal account helper several years ago without completing the bank's formal trusted contact person documentation process, and that this informal arrangement would need to be formalized before July 13th to ensure his account remained fully compliant under the new standards. Walter and his daughter returned to the branch together the following day, completed the trusted contact person documentation in approximately 40 minutes, and received written confirmation from the branch manager that his account was fully compliant with the new requirements taking effect on July 13th. Walter told me afterward that if he had not gone into the branch and asked specifically to speak with the branch manager, he would never have known the informal arrangement with his daughter needed to be formalized, and he would have found out about the compliance gap only after a flag had already been generated on his account after the implementation date. So here are 3 steps you can complete before July 13th. Step 1. Visit your bank branch this week and ask specifically to speak with the branch manager, not a teller, and ask the 3 specific questions I described earlier about your account compliance status, your government deposit arrangements, and any authorized person documentation requirements. Do not accept a general reassurance that everything is fine. Ask specifically whether any action is required from you before July 13th and get the answer in writing if possible. Step 2, log into your My Service Canada account at canada.ca/en/employment-social-development and verify that your direct deposit information for CPP OAS and GIS shows your current bank account details and that the account information matches exactly what your bank has on file for your account. If there is any discrepancy between what Service Canada shows and what your bank has on file, contact Service Canada at 1-800-277-9914 immediately to update your direct deposit information before July 13th. Step 3, log into your CRA My Account at canada.ca/en/revenue-agency and confirm that your banking information on file with the CRA matches your current account details, and check whether any correspondence from the CRA or Service Canada about your benefit accounts is pending in your secure inbox that you may not have seen if you do not regularly check your online government accounts. Share this video immediately with every person you know who is over 60 and receiving CPP or OAS, because the seniors most at risk of being caught off guard by these July 13th changes are the ones who have not been told clearly what is changing and what specific actions are required before the implementation date. One critical warning before you go. Scammers are already using the July 13th bank rule changes to target Canadian seniors with calls claiming to be from their bank, from Service Canada, or from FINTRAC, telling seniors that their account has been flagged under the new rules and that they need to provide personal information or transfer funds immediately to a compliant account before July 13th. This is a scam. No legitimate bank, government agency, or regulatory body will ever call you unsolicited and ask you to transfer funds or provide banking information over the phone to comply with new banking rules. Your real bank will communicate any required documentation through official written notice or through a branch visit that you initiate. The CRA will never demand immediate payment by phone or ask for gift cards. If you receive a call like this, hang up immediately and report it to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre at 1-888-495-8501. Always go to your branch in person and ask for the branch manager if you have any concern about your account compliance before July 13th. Have you already visited your bank and asked about the new rules taking effect on July 13th? And when you think about your own account right now, do you have any joint account holders, power of attorney designations, or informal family arrangements that may need to be formally documented before the implementation date? Drop your province and your bank in the comments right now, because I want to understand which institutions are proactively reaching out to senior customers before July 13th and which ones are leaving seniors like Walter to find out about compliance gaps only after the deadline has already passed. What we covered today is confirmed and already being implemented by Canadian banks in preparation for the July 13th compliance deadline. More banking regulation updates and government benefit changes are scheduled before the end of 2026, and neither your bank nor Service Canada will send you a personal breakdown of how every change affects your specific CPP, OAS, and GIS deposit arrangements. Subscribe now so that information reaches you here before the deadline arrives and before a compliance gap affects your access to the government income you earned. I am Linda's Canada Pension Guide, and I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.